Welcome to the Siddha Podcast. I'm the host, Dr. Stella Watke, and today's guest is Reverend Ann Sarasvati Hayes. With Ann, we will dive deep into the Kriya Yoga practice. Welcome, Ann, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Stella. It's an honor to share with you.
It's an honor to have you. Um, Reverend Ann Sarasvati Hayes has studied with Yogacharya Ellen Grace O'Brian since 2000 and was ordained in the Kriya Yoga tradition in 2007. She is a Kriya Yoga teacher at the Center of Spiritual Enlightenment. Reverend Hayes is active as a teacher, spiritual counselor, and an assistant producer of the Yoga Hour podcast. She is a retired registered nurse and former director of several non-profit health organizations in San Jose, California. Together with her husband, Reverend Jeff Collins, she is the co-founder of the Center Rosa Kriya Yoga Meditation group. Welcome again, Ann.
Thank you.
And you are deeply rooted in the Kriya Yoga tradition of Paramahansa Yogananda, Eugene Davis, and Ellen Grace O'Brian, and you are a minister at the Center of Spiritual Enlightenment. How did you end up being a minister at CSE? Did you grow up as a Kriya yogi, or how did your spiritual path unfold?
Well, my path into Kriya Yoga is probably similar to what many have experienced in that, no, I was not raised in Kriya Yoga. My mother was an Irish Catholic woman, and my father was from Czechoslovakia and was Jewish. And they met during World War II in England and got married and ended up moving to Canada after the war. And that's where I was born and raised. And I was raised as a Catholic and went to Catholic school, elementary school, and Mass every Sunday with my mom. And but there was some of the things that I was taught at the time. Even I remember when I was 6 years old in the grade one, the teacher was talking about that if you were not Catholic, you wouldn't go to heaven. And I didn't really understand that. I thought, I knew that my dad was Jewish, that he was not Catholic, and that his parents were murdered in the Holocaust. And so of course I didn't know them, but I knew they must have been nice people because they were my dad's parents. And I thought, well, why wouldn't they go to heaven? And so I remember going home and asking my mom that question. And I don't remember what she told me, but, um, uh, I know that she was not, she didn't prescribe to that idea that, only Catholics would go to heaven. So, and it wasn't that I ever had a bad experience in the Catholic Church. It just didn't really resonate with me. And, I probably, and I remember, even at times thinking, well, maybe I would be a nun. I was always kind of a spiritual seeker. And I, at one point, was trying different churches, Christian churches. I didn't really know anything else, and Jewish churches, so synagogues and spiritual centers. And nothing really, it wasn't quite right for me. And then I met my husband, and we were looking for a church to be married in because I said I really wanted a spiritual ceremony. And so we saw an ad in the newspaper. It wasn't even an ad, it was an article about this new church that was forming in San Jose, where the East and the West were coming together, and it described that. And my husband was interested in meditation, had been meditating for many years. I didn't know anything about it. Um, and so I said, well, let's try this. And it was in our neighborhood, this church. So we went and we heard Yogacharya O'Brian speak, and both of us just fell in love. It was like, this is the place. And I've heard many other people say that when they first hear these teachings of Kriya Yoga, that it was like, oh, this is what I've known in my heart, but I never heard any spiritual teacher express that. And that is that we are all already pure and whole, and we are not, like in the Catholic tradition, you have to do things to gain God's grace. Whereas in the teachings of Kriya Yoga and the teachings of yoga say we already have that. It's already there. We just have to remove the obstacles to our awareness of that presence of God in ourselves and in our life, and that we are emanations, as Eugene Davis used to say, we are units of God. And so that to me, and both my husband and I, so we started, that was in 1998, and started studying there, and ended up both entering the seminary at that time, and trained to be ministers and teachers. So that's kind of how we came to Kriya Yoga. And I ended up retiring at one point from my full-time job as in nursing and running these nonprofit organizations, and working at the center as a staff minister. So that's kind of my story.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I think we have a lot of parallels. I'll, I will share with you another time. It's very interesting, but you know, I just remembered, and I think many people probably have that, like you say, that, you kind of have this knowing inside of you already, but then, with some of the belief system, it doesn't resonate so well for you
Mm-hmm.
personally. And then, so you kind of
Mm-hmm.
seeking, and all of a sudden it makes click with something. And for us, that was Kriya Yoga.
Yeah, right.
It's like, yes,
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
Um, so you have been really a Kriya Yogi for a very long time, and you are highly engaged in these Kriya Yoga practices. Would you like to share with our listeners what Kriya Yoga actually is, and what does it mean to be a Kriya Yogi?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I just want to start by saying, I know your teacher and Marty's teacher, Roy Eugene Davis, is the guru of my guru, uh, Ellen Grace O'Brian. And I heard and learned from many years. I was very fortunate to be to hear Mr. Davis speak many times and teach. And I've been to his ashram and in Georgia, and several times. And so that is really um, what I love about this practice is how practical it is. It's practical. And Mr. Davis was such a practical person, and down to earth. And that's what I really appreciated. And I also appreciate that the teachings are very pure, that he received the teachings from his teacher, Paramahansa Yogananda, who brought these teachings of these teachings of Kriya Yoga, brought them from India in 1920. So, and Roy met his teacher, and then taught for so many years. And then my teacher learned from him and never really altered the teachings, never really embellished upon them, never changed them, never, but because there's such a universal teaching, it can be applied, in modern day life to our lives now, how we live our lives in this modern world. So, the Kriya Yoga, actually, Kriya means, it comes from the root word Kri, which means action. In Sanskrit, the Kri, and then yoga means wholeness or oneness. So yoga is not just um, in the Western world, we think of yoga as the exercise, and yoga studios are on every corner of a town. But yoga is actually an ancient philosophy, and it's very broad, and the exercises, the postures, are a very small part um, of yoga. So Kriya Yoga brings all these teachings together, and they're really just practices and actions that bring us into union with God, Kriya Yoga. And it's not a religion, so it's a spiritual practice. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So anybody from any religion or background can practice Kriya Yoga, even if you don't believe in God. You can practice Kriya Yoga. Although Kriya Yoga does talk about supreme consciousness or a higher power um, that nurtures the universe and runs the universe. So so that's kind of Kriya Yoga, um, kind of at the high level. And it's spelled out in the teachings in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. There's a whole chapter on Kriya Yoga, and it really consists of self-discipline, self-study, and surrender to God, or surrender our sense of separateness from the One, however we perceive that to be.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I think it's Roy defined surrender as letting go of resistance. And I always like that part because nobody wants to surrender. At least many of
Yeah,
us don't have this
yeah,
kind of resistance to that. But letting
uh-huh.
go of resistance and, allow kind of the support, which is, always there to really unfold. I think that's a wonderful way to put it. Um, you mentioned that really Kriya Yoga, centers, and the philosophy itself is for everyone. Um, so, can you just maybe, yeah,
Well, I
say
have
something?
known, there's known of, high level teachers in other traditions, um, uh, who have gone through Kriya initiation.
Mm,
Um, when we had, when Mr. Davis was still alive, we had several years of what we were doing at Kriya, what we called a Kriya Congress, and all came together from, Mr. Davis's students from all over the world, and Yogacharya O'Brien's students, um, and other spiritual leaders came together, and we'd had a several day conference with a lot of teaching and learning, and um, 400 or 500 people usually would attend those. And um, I remember one time there's a teacher, Rabbi Rami Shapiro, who's a Jewish teacher. And I remember he joined us, and he was initiated into Kriya Yoga. Another time, another Christian teacher that joined us, and well-known Christian teacher in the United States, and she joined us and was initiated into Kriya Yoga. So it's not that they gave up their religion, but they have more understanding of the. I think what happens is that the teachings of Kriya Yoga can bring you a deeper understanding and a deeper appreciation for your own religion of origin. And you can do those practices, and you can still be, a Catholic or a Muslim. There's many Muslims that come to our center in San Jose that, they don't feel that it's in opposition to what they've learned, but it's an enhancement.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful. How can the practices of Kriya Yoga help people in challenging times?
Well, we talked about those practices, of self-discipline, which is really just how Mr. Davis used to say, do what you know you should do. I mean, we know how to act, we know how to live. Um, so, uh, but we don't always listen to ourselves. So self-discipline is just listening to yourself and then doing that. And then self-study is more about kind of just understanding what's going on with you, also studying scripture, but also studying yourself and um, how we are a part of the one and how that works in our lives. And then the surrender, as you were talking about, can have a negative connotation. But it's just letting go of that resistance, as you say, to thinking that we're separate, and to understanding and surrendering into the idea that we are one, part of the one, the whole of life. We're everything. We talk about nature. Often people talk about nature as a separate thing, but we are nature. So, as we learn more about Kriya Yoga, there's also lifestyle practices like being harmless, which has a lot of aspects to it, but being kind is part of that. Not stealing, being appreciating of what you have, being content with what you have, understanding the truth of who you are. There's all those practices in the yamas and the niyamas. Not being attached to the outcome of our actions, just doing the best we can do, giving our all for God, and then letting it go, and just knowing that the best will come out of that, whatever that is supposed to be, and not getting upset if it doesn't go the way we think it should go. So there's all those practices of Kriya Yoga, and in addition to meditation, that gives us a sense of calmness, a sense of feeling complete and whole. And so when those difficult times in our lives happen, which, we're human, it happens to everybody. And sometimes tumultuous times. There's difficulties now in our country that people are worried about, changes that are happening that people are upset about. Some people think it's good and other people don't. So there's a lot of discord. And a lot of that is happening all over the world too. And people are worried and upset and mad and complaining, and that doesn't really solve any problems. It doesn't help. And I really feel, and I think the teachers in this tradition feel, that being that calm presence of peace in the midst of tumultuous times brings a sense of calm to others. And I think that then when we have our meditation practice, when we practice these lifestyle practices of Kriya Yoga, we can be a presence of peace, and that the more and more of us that are offering that energy out into the world, I think that will change things. And Paramahansa Yogananda said that will change things in the world. So, um, so I think I think the practices and the practice of meditation are really what are um, help us. It certainly helps me personally, and I think that's important, for me to not be upset and angry and fearful all the time. It doesn't help anything.
Right. Yeah, I think it's wonderful to hear that really the practices of Kriya Yoga and meditation, I think the more we engage in these practices, the more we establish and root and are connected to this deep calmness and joy within.
Mm-hmm.
I always like this picture of, waves on the ocean and we are a little boat. And if the anchor is really strong and heavy, then the waves can come, but they won't do much to us anymore. So,
That is a really good, yeah, that is a really good metaphor, that having that anchor, that it's our spiritual strength
right.
that supports us in these times. And so when we're in that boat with that anchor, other people can get in that boat with us.
Yeah, that's
We're
true.
not alone. And then they can feel centered and have some foundation too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great metaphor.
Um, can those practices also help us, guide, or know our purpose, or guide, us our own work, or to know what we are supposed to do or not?
I hear so many people nowadays in this kind of tumultuous time that we're living, what is mine to do? What can I do? And everybody has something, you know. I have a good friend that it's important to her to get out and protest. She's at all the marches, and 75-year-old woman, she's out there with her signs every week. And uh and she does a lot of work in but then I'm not that person, I'm not really the one to get out and protest. But but I have whatever I have to do. And sometimes for people, it can be just something simple, like kind of just being aware of your consciousness. And as I said, being aware of um, who we are in this world. So just like going to the grocery store and smiling and at the clerk when you're checking out, and you never know how you can affect other people. That person may have been having a really bad day. The person before you may have been giving them a hard time, and then you come and you smile at them and say something nice, and it makes them feel better. So you just never know. So, and it's important to remember that our work is not a job. It's not, uh, we don't, it's our work, as a spiritual practice, our work is to awaken to who and what we are as divine beings. So that's our work. And it can show up as a job, it can show up as, like what you're doing with this podcast and the work that you do with sound healing. That's part of your, income too. So, but it's not, or somebody may be running a business, and it's how they run the business and what they bring to their employees, or, it's an employee that's working, but how do they do their work, and how do they bring themselves to the job and their coworkers? So there's, our work in the world is an outpouring of our Dharma, and our Dharma is actually to awaken, to know who and what we are as spiritual beings, and to live and act from that place of knowing.
Mm.
So our practices, whatever they are, and Kriya Yoga spells them out, um, help us to be that, and to, and then as we practice, our mind's quiet, our mind becomes clear, our thoughts become clear, our soul becomes more present and aware, and we're more aware of that. And then we can discern what it is ours to do. Maybe it is my job now. Now I need to go out and do some protesting, or what is my work to do in the world now that I have a clear understanding uh, of what I am as a spiritual being. And of course, that's what I love about this practice, is that it's a lifelong practice. I'm never perfect, and I never will be. And so that's another thing that I love about Kriya Yoga, is I'll always be doing it, and I'll always be practicing, and I'll always be learning
There's
about
always
my,
something to do.
always something to do. And it's not difficult. It's just, times change, and I change, and our lives change. And so it always keeps bringing me new joy.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And that's great that you pointed out that Kriya Yoga practice, or, it doesn't end with our meditation. It's 24/7.
It's
It's all the
24/7.
time, and all the challenges we meet in our life are, something to help us to work through our little knots and
Yes, yes,
going
exactly.
on. So
Yeah, yeah,
wonderful.
exactly, exactly.
Um, You've mentioned before that many people um, are sometimes, caught up in anxiety and fear. Are there any practices you can think of which help people to calm the mind in these situations?
Well, I think when, in specific times when you get caught up in something, like I might get caught up in something if I'm uh, looking at the news, and then I get all worried and upset about it. But my meditation practice helps me observe myself and say, oh, your stomach's getting tight, your mind is worrying, you're getting fearful, how's this going to work? And I'm, so upset, and how am I going to deal with this situation? Um, and when I find myself in that situation, so for me, meditation is the primary, because meditation and having a regular practice of meditation helps me learn, as a tool. It helps me learn to observe myself and to observe what's going on in my mind, so I can catch myself before I get too far down into the hole of worry and upset. And then I can decide, okay, what do I need to do? Maybe I need to get up and go for a walk. Maybe I need to just stop for a moment. Like, if you get caught up in a difficult conversation that's upsetting you, maybe I just need to stop and take a deep breath. Um, Maybe I need to extricate myself from that situation, um, in a harmless way. And so am I going to do that? And all that's kind of going on, in split second. But so there's so we can do that. We can, meditation helps us to see that, and then we can step away from whatever it is that's upsetting us or worrying us, take a bigger picture look at it. Um, Maybe, you know, change what we're doing. If we're doing something like watching the news, okay, that's not working. I need to get away from that. So maybe I need to change the channel to something that's uplifting and funny, and, or read something, that's uplifting, or, um, uh, so it's just, little things that we can do, um, that we can remove ourselves from those worrying times. And then think about, well, then, as we were talking about earlier, what is my work to do? What can I do about this? Is there something I can do? Or maybe there isn't in this moment, but maybe at another time there's something I can do. So that would help. Maybe I can volunteer at a food bank or something. I mean, that kind of thing, that if we're worried about what's happening to people, we can do our little part, and all the little parts um, come together in this world. And if we all act with kindness, and then we can make a difference. Even if we think it's just a little thing, it's a big thing, really.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Um, I think it's great to point out that we can always do something, and little things can make such a big difference. It's the
Yes.
ripples.
It's the ripples. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's also wonderful to hear, um, and remind ourselves, how meditation really, a big shift, I think, is really becoming aware of what's going on inside of us, outside of, also that we kind of see where reactions and things are coming from in other people and in ourselves, and recognize that, and then have this, maybe because we're a little bit calmer and centered, have this flexibility, like you said, I could do this, or that, so we have a choice and are
Mhm.
not just reacting in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. The
That's
responding, to it rather than reacting.
exactly.
Which sometimes, somebody might say something, for example, and you think it's all about me, but then you have to, why are they attacking me? Why are they saying that? And it has nothing to do with you, really, in the long run. So yeah, it's being able to respond rather than react. And it's, as I said, I still react. And so I'm still learning and still practicing,
Right.
even after 26 years that I've been studying this and
Yes.
practicing.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah,
I totally
yeah,
agree.
yeah, yeah.
And are there specific practices that help you or have helped you the most? Would you like to share something, how your spiritual life looks like?
Well, I have a daily practice and of meditation, and as my teacher and my teacher's teacher, Mr. Davis, have guided me, is to, for me, it's the morning practice before I get caught up in the daily stuff. I get up and have my meditation practice. And I think that is probably the most important thing. I think, and it was something that Mr. Davis always recommended too, was to be around spiritually minded people. To uh, and I find myself, like when I live, 2 hours away from the Center for Spiritual Enlightenment. I used to live 15 minutes away. Um, so when I go there, and to be there with in that atmosphere of being around people that understand these practices and are practicing these practices, um, it's very uplifting and so soul fulfilling, really.
Mm.
So being around spiritually minded people, but I think the primary is, of course, my daily meditation practice, getting out in nature, um, and um, yeah, that's kind of my basic
That's
practice. And study. I continue to study and read, and
Yeah, wonderful.
mhm.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much, Anne, for sharing all that. I think this is very helpful for our listeners. Um, is there anything else you would like to share? Um,
Well, I just wanted to say that if for some people Kriya Yoga is not their path.
mm,
And I know it's something that we've all been taught, that we don't proselytize, those of us that do practice Kriya Yoga, that there's many different paths, um, but up the same mountain and up to the same goal of self and God realization. And so, whatever your path is, whatever works for you, take some time. And most religions now are teaching a form of meditation. Take some time in silence. I think that that's where my husband one time said that the time in silence is where the healing happens. And I think that it is so true for all of us. So some time in silence every day, um, and just be kind. Be kind to yourself, which is really important. We forget sometimes about being kind to ourselves. Be kind to yourself, but also be kind to others, and see the divine in every person that you meet.
Thank you so much, and it's wonderful. Um, yeah, how can people find you and hear more of you?
Well, my husband and I, as you said earlier, we have a weekly meditation group online, Santa Rosa Kriya Yoga Meditation Group, and you can find us on santarosameditation.org. And then I'm teaching some classes at the Center for Spiritual Enlightenment. Be teaching an online class coming up May 14th called Living the Eternal Way. And I'm actually not teaching a class, I'm leading. Yogacharya O'Brian has made a series of online classes called Living the Eternal Way that you can get on her website, ellengraceobrian.org. And it's a 6-week course. It's a foundational course on Kriya Yoga. And I'll be leading a weekly study group for 6 weeks, starting May 14th. So you have to be doing that course with Yogacharya O'Brian, this online course, which, you can, because it's online, it's already recorded. You can do that at any time during your week, and then come to the study group on Wednesday evenings. So
Awesome.
I'll be doing that as well. So, and then there's a Kriya Yoga meditation retreat that's coming up at the end of June, the Center for Spiritual Enlightenment. It's you can do that either online or in person. And if somebody wants to be initiated, that's and learn the Kriya Yoga pranayam, um, that will be at the end of June, and that's csecenter.org.
Okay,
So
perfect. We will post all these links below the YouTube recording here of the podcast, so people can find all that. I'm even I'm very tempted to join myself now.
yeah,
It's always great to really deepen and hear it from a different angle. So yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for all the work you do. Thank you for being here with us, and if the listeners like this video, please like it, subscribe the channel, yeah, check out the websites below, and yeah, I think we wish you just a wonderful journey, whatever that journey is for you. Thank you again, Anne, for
thank
being
you.
here. Mm,
Thank you very much. And thank you to your listeners
thank you.
for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.